All right, we're live again. Welcome to the Music for Humans podcast. Today, my guest is Itamar Erez. He's an internationally renowned composer and guitarist who shared the stage with amazing musicians such as Omar Faruk Tekbilek, Jean-Louis Matinier, Zohar Fresco, and many more. So it's really great to have you here today, Itamar. How you doing?
Thanks so much. I am doing very well. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. I would love to, start by hearing a little bit about your background, how you got into music, and what led you to have like this impressive career you've been having in your life.
Yeah, well, it started, I was 6 or 7, and I wanted to play piano. And I don't remember actually what was the first impulse and why, but I just remember that I asked to have a piano, and my parents they said, yeah, okay. So that was, I know a lot of people, not everyone has that kind of experience where it was okay to, to have a piano at home so, I feel very lucky. So we actually, all the family started piano lessons, my parents, my sister, and within a month or two, I was already advancing so quickly that everyone, they just stopped. So that started my music development, I would say, and
So
I
it came from you, like your parents never
yeah,
told you like you should start like learning an
yeah, no, and
instrument.
we don't have musicians in the family. My parents never played music. It was a very musical family in the matter of there was always music playing. My father, he was very curious about music. He would bring all kinds of unique music home, some jazz and contemporary classical music and world music. And so,
Wow, that's amazing. And so you were saying that like because you were advancing so quickly, the rest of your family were like, "Well, I guess this is Itamar's things, and us we're gonna let him
yeah,
continue,"
yeah,
and they
exactly.
kind
They
of
kind
let
of
go.
gave up.
That's funny.
So that was the beginning, and I studied classical piano with a teacher, and after 4 or 5 years, I guess I felt like I wanted some change, and I wanted to be like a regular kid on the block, so I decided to take a break for a few years. And when I was 15, I got back to the piano and took the guitar. Took the guitar for the first time. I started taking lessons, and since then I'm connected to both instruments.
That's amazing. What made you want to learn the guitar?
Um, I think it was easier to move around with, to play with friends. 15, you're a much more social person. You want to impress, you want to play with friends, you want to, so that was that.
I made
And
the same transition actually.
oh, really?
Yeah, that's why I was curious because well, my mom used to play the piano when I was a kid all the time, and she had all of us learn piano. I
Yeah,
have four siblings. We all learned a little bit.
yeah,
Um, and then yeah, when I got around the same age, like 14, 15, I wanted to learn the guitar too.
yeah,
But me, it's because like I had, yeah, kind of like the same thing you're explaining. My neighbor had like this electric guitar, and I was always so impressed, and that's what I wanted to play too. So
yeah, yeah,
I switched to the guitar, but
yeah,
yeah, it's a more like you like to show off with your friends, bring the guitar around, and all this. Like you
yeah,
said, it's a more
exactly.
social
Yeah,
instrument.
yeah.
Or you
But
play.
I took classical guitar and did play around with the electric guitar for a little bit, but it didn't stick for long. Um, and then, I was playing both instruments, and until now, I have the issue of fingernails in one hand, which is good for the classical guitar, nylon string guitar, but not so good for the piano. So I'm dealing with this constantly, with this conflict. But I love both instruments equally. I feel very blessed and lucky to be able to play both
Yeah.
instruments. And
Yeah, this is great. And how did you go from like playing, for fun, taking lessons to start touring the globe with like, famous world music ensemble and composing your own music and all this? Like,
yeah, well, it started small, of course, in Israel where I was living. Um, uh, During the army time, I played in an orchestra. Again, I was very lucky to be able to do that, play music, especially in a country like Israel, where it's not that easy. And so I played for 3 years electric guitar there in the orchestra. And through that, I met other musicians and started, accompanying some singers. I continued studying all along. I met some jazz musicians. Learn more about improvisation and playing together with people. Uh, so yeah, my path has been very lots of changes all the time. I guess it's my personality. I guess that I don't like to stay in one place for a long time. I kind of get bored with the same old thing. So I did a bit of that, and then I decided to study composition.
okay.
I composed for myself for a long time, but I went to Germany to study composition. So I did classical composition, and uh, I was in England for a year. Exploring more the classical traditions. And later on, I just felt that it's not really the path for me, because as a classical composer, you write music and you deliver it to other musicians to play it, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it's really important, the actual physical contact with the instrument, playing the instrument, improvising, all those aspects that were not existing for me as a composer. Putting notes on paper. It was very, I feel, I'm, it's. I'm very happy that I did that training because it helped me with many, many things musically. But after a while, I decided, okay, I want to go back to. I didn't play the guitar for a long time because I was kind of pursuing more composition and piano. So I took back the guitar and started playing. From the avant-garde music, I started playing like really simple chords, and I was like, wow, this instrument is so beautiful, and things don't need to be complicated. And I what I want in music is I want to create beautiful music. I don't want to create intellectual and impressive, and it's like where people say, oh, he's really good, but it doesn't move me, right?
Yeah.
So during this stage, I started, playing with other people and writing music that involves me as a player, improviser. So I started an ensemble. I was in Vancouver already at the time.
Nice.
Started the Adam ensemble, and I recorded several albums. Um, Moved back to Israel. I did another album with local ensemble, and Yeah, just like that, things develop
Yeah, definitely.
and
It's very
yeah,
interesting what you were talking about also about when you were studying music for a while, like the composition aspect is very it can become very lonely at some point because
yeah,
you spend so many hours, like composing and thinking the ideas and like polishing every little things, and then the
yeah,
moment you spend with the musicians playing your music is very little compared to the
yes,
amount of time that you spend on your own.
yeah,
uh so that's one of the thing that you were missing, like the kind of, I feel when you play
yeah,
music with other musicians, you get to share the experience also while you're playing with them and you're
absolutely.
communicating together. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're in the moment, right? And
Mm.
things happen in the moment that you can't control when you're sitting at home and thinking, writing things on a paper. But when you meet with people and you improvise and you make music, things happen in the moment, and I like that part of making music. So my music usually has some written stuff that are kind of fixed, and a lot of freedom also to improvise around what's written. And
Yeah,
yeah,
so this way there's always the your music stays alive, like
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And as you become a better player too, and as you become better, because when you play with other musicians also, the communications between the musician evolve with time the more you play together, and then ideas
exactly.
come up and you get inspired by the other musicians. And
Yeah,
um, so
yeah,
that was one
exactly,
thing
exactly.
I got. I was very lucky. We were talking before we start recording that
Mhm.
I was working on tour with this show, and I was very lucky because this music was composed by a composer actually from Canada. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. His name is Michel Cusson. He's from Montreal.
Don't think I know him.
He
Okay.
composed a lot of music for like movies and lots of shows with Cirque du Soleil, and he used to have like a kind of like rock fusion band called Uzeb. They toured all over the world
Oh, of
too.
course, of course. Use up. Yeah, yeah, I
Yes,
know.
okay. So he's the lead. He was the lead guitarist and composer of most of the music.
Okay.
And him, he's, we always I really got along well with him because he always liked that we keep like free sections where we could all improvise and have our
Yeah.
solos. And when I first joined the show, I kind of like wrote my solos. I was just fresh out of my classical bachelor in violin, classical violin. I was
Yes.
not really good at improvising, and then all the other musicians in the band were all improvising quite a bit. So eventually I started practicing more and listening to what the guitar player was doing. And then
Yeah.
at the end, like, I, like my understanding of improvisation and of like musical ideas was so different. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah.
it's very interesting. And another thing that was also pretty fun about that show is like it was kind of like a big journey through the world with like different kind of like countries that we would kind of like do expositions of different places in the world. And there was lots of world music, like Spanish music, inspired African music, like West African music. And so I got to learn also to play in all these different styles, and I had to
Hmm.
listen to a lot of that kind of music. And
Yeah. Oh,
um,
that's great.
yeah, it
Yeah.
it really opened my eyes to like a different world of music where I was like, I love classical music, but there's a lot more out there that can be done with the
Yeah.
violin.
Yeah. 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 For sure.
And yeah, that leads me to my next question for you, because you had the amazing opportunities to work with so many different musicians with like different genre. And I was wondering like if there's any like key aspects or techniques of or certain rhythms that are like very specific to a different genre of music that you use when you improvise or things like this.
Hmm. Interesting question. Um, I don't think I can put my finger on specific things. Maybe um, talking about rhythm. I like to use like kind of unique meters. So not 3/4 or 4/4. Although I love these one as well, but
Yeah,
I explored a lot. Like fives and sevens and nines and 11s and things like that in my music.
that's amazing.
So that's taken, of course, from world music that I was influenced by. Listening to a lot of, if that's Indian, East Indian music, or even in jazz. In the last few years, a lot of people are playing in a more unusual time signatures, and but that's I think has been there all along. Is kind of the need to kind of break the evenness of
Yeah,
to create something that's
different.
a little bit different. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for instance, I have a new song a new composition that I just released. It's kind of in 4/4, but each beat is divided to five. So it's kind of it feels like a 1, 2, 3, 4, but within it there's subdivision of five. So
Okay, cool.
so it's
Wow.
so I think if people listen to it, they may not even notice it. It's kind of very subtle.
Yeah.
But if you are a musician, you're probably going to hear, okay, that's something is going on there. So I like when things are subtle, not so much in your face, and organic.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
great.
So
Yeah.
you can always do too much in this, right? You can.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah.
And was there like a particular artist that you met through the years, or some music you heard traveling that inspired you to kind of like go more in
Oh,
that
so
direction?
much. So many, so much. Uh, one of the things is when I went back to Israel, my wife was pregnant. We decided to move back because our parents were in Israel, and then I started I started working with Omar Faruk Tekbilek, who's a great Sufi musician, and I ended up touring with him for 10 years. And through his music, I learned more about Turkish music and Arabic music and the scales, the different maqams, and I had to change my guitar and add some quarter tones by
Oh,
adding
wow.
some frets, like semi frets, so I could produce when needed, in a quarter tone, right? It's in the music. You have, I
Yeah.
had to come up with a solution for that. So that was a big influence for a while. So I wrote some music that was influenced by this kind of Middle Eastern music. At the same time, I went to Spain several times and studied a little bit flamenco guitar and met one of my heroes, which is Egberto Gismonti, is a great Brazilian composer, pianist, guitarist, and all these influences are somehow in my music. It's kind of strange, but
But
yeah,
it's
there's
amazing.
definitely
Yeah.
some Brazilian influences, some Middle Eastern influences, jazz, classical. So
Oh, that's amazing. I'm curious about the quarter tone frets actually, because
yeah.
I became very like obsessed with Middle Eastern music when I was on tour, because we had like a few piece that was like inspired by Middle Eastern, music. One of them
Yeah.
actually was on 7/8, and then I had to learn to improvise in 7/8 and like with the Middle Eastern scales. And since the violin is fretless too, I was listening to a lot
Yeah.
of like Middle Eastern violinists, and um, like they play with the quarter tone and their vibrato, and everything is very different. So I was always trying to get that tone that they have. And then
Yeah.
I discovered the instrument, the oud, that I didn't know before, that I really I was always yeah, I love this instrument.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you talked about those quarter tone fret, I was wondering if this was kind of to make something similar to kind of like how the oud would sound like with your guitar,
Yeah,
or
absolutely,
okay.
absolutely. So, the music would have those quarter tones, and that flamenco music was very much influenced by Arabic music and Jewish music, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And oud playing as well. So they have in flamenco they have this technique of using the thumb back and forth like an oud plectrum.
Yep.
So I started playing the guitar, but it really sounded like an oud.
Ah,
And
that's amazing.
there are several videos on YouTube of me playing with Ishai Afterman, who is a great percussionist,
Okay.
and where I'm using those quarter tones, and uh, it really sounds very, very similar to an oud. Yeah,
That's amazing. Yeah,
yeah.
well, I will definitely go and check
Especially in
that
the
out.
lower register of the guitar, it sounds very, very close to the oud.
So, what is the tuning of the oud? Is it in fourth or is it in fifth? Is it similar to like a violin or a
I
guitar?
think so. I'm not a big expert. I never played the oud.
Okay.
I had people ask me, why don't you play the oud? But so many people do that and so well, right? So I
Yeah.
just decided, okay, I'll stick with the guitar. But um, so I think there are two different tunings in the ouds. I think there's the Turkish system and there's the Arabic, and I think it's in fourths,
Okay.
but I'll have to check that for sure.
That would make sense because
Yeah.
I know on the violin too they changed the tuning for the
Oh yeah.
Arabic system. Yeah, and it's
Oh,
like different sets of strings too.
right.
And I know the Indians too. They do the same thing. It's different strings, and then the tuning is different as well. I learned that through my students. Actually, I have like this little girl. She's like, I think she just turned 8 years old. Her parents are from India, and her dad used to play the violin
Uh-huh.
long time ago, and she always talked to me about how the violin is in India and how it works, and she knows
Oh
everything
wow.
about it. And we started to learn like folk, kind of like Indian, classical music and folk music. And I've been discovering a lot of music
Oh
with her, and I'm like, it's amazing
wow,
how much you
amazing,
can learn from like an 8-year-old kid. Like it's one of the things
amazing.
that I really love about teaching music. It's like I never
Yeah.
stop learning.
Yeah. So how do you tune the violin in the Indian tradition
So I think it's tuned in fourth.
in
So
fourth? Okay.
yeah. So in
Right. As opposed
normally
to
it's
fifth.
fifth. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, and they play with a very different technique too. So rather than having it really high on your shoulder here, they kind of like leave it like hanging
Yeah, that's in
in
the Middle
front.
East as well. They
Yeah.
use that. Yeah.
And the vibrato is always kind of like sliding a little bit. It's so
Yeah.
different that like I've been learning in such a way all my life that trying those different techniques for me is still like I need to kind of like forget everything I've
Yeah.
learned before,
Yeah. Yeah.
and try it in a different way. So
Yeah.
but
I
yeah.
don't know if you can see the guitars behind me.
Yeah.
So the second guitar, you can see the small guitar. That's a requinto,
Okay.
which is a Mexican, and it's tuned a fourth higher than a regular guitar. And the one next to it is a fretless guitar. So
Oh
it's
wow.
like a violin, but 6 strings, and
Well, that
Very,
must
very difficult to play. Very,
that's what
very
I was
difficult.
gonna say. Yeah, it must be really hard.
Yeah, it's insane.
Because the violin, what I feel, well, it's like, but I've been learning for a very long time. But since it's
Yeah,
pretty small,
yeah,
like the muscle memory, is it's a little bit easier, I guess, to build. Like I know exactly like each motion when I shift
yeah,
position and the distance between my finger to like be in tune, all the time.
yeah.
But on a guitar, I would feel so lost because it's so much
Uh-huh.
bigger.
Yeah,
Or like double
it's
bass or a cello. I don't know how they do it either.
this is crazy. Even thinking about the violin, such a small instrument, each tiniest movement is going to change your tuning, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you need to use your ear a lot, right? For
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Yeah. You need to.
incredible.
That's
Yeah,
actually another thing that I've been noticing with my students is like the you need to really develop your ear to listen to very very specific things
yeah,
because on the violin as soon as you're just a little bit off, the tone sounds kind of dead. Your
yeah,
violin won't ring as much, and when
yeah.
you're like right on, like all the harmonics start ringing inside the violin. And then I try to make my
Hmm.
students like hear this, like you, like right now
Yeah,
you're right on, like your violin is ringing, and at
yeah.
first they're like, I don't understand what you're talking
Yes,
about, and then
yes,
they
yes.
start hearing it more and more, and then
Yeah,
eventually they're like, okay, yeah, now I know.
yeah. It's it's similar. I mean, of course, in violin you have other challenges, but also when I teach classical guitar and I tell a student, do you hear the noises? And sometimes they are not used to hearing this. So they're developing. So they may look at me. What are you talking about? Okay, there is an open string that is keeps ringing when you don't need it, right? So it's yeah, you just develop a kind of just a different kind of hearing sense,
Yeah, it's like your focus
the
becomes
details.
wider,
Yeah,
like because I felt at the beginning the focus is really really on just like one thing, and then
yeah,
eventually once this becomes kind of like a second nature, then you can focus on like a little bit more and a little bit more, and then eventually you can hear so much more, like that's what I
yeah.
tell some of my students too. Sometimes they're like, "Oh, you play so perfectly," and I'm like, "Yeah, no, I really don't play perfectly." But like, you will hear it more and more. Like, you will start. The more you evolve, the more you will start hearing like all the little mistakes I make. Like, there's always mistakes, but it's
Mhm.
okay.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, like I was saying, like I feel like teaching, taught me well, and I keep learning so much through music, through
Yeah,
teaching music, and I learn more about music, but I also learn a lot about different cultures, different people, different personalities, how to deal with different kind of students and all this.
yes, for
um,
sure.
and then, do you have like any experience like through teaching that like that kind of like changed maybe even your way of playing music, or just teaching, or experience like this?
One thing I'll say that at least with the guitar, I'm teaching both guitar and piano. And the thing with the guitar is that a lot of people who play, even for a few years, they learn the guitar just by patterns, right? And
Yeah.
not being aware where they are, what note they are playing, things like that.
Yeah.
So, for a long time, when a student comes to me, I start right away speaking about, learning the guitar um, in a certain way that you always know where you are at. All right. So that's, I feel like it's a blind spot for a lot of guitarists.
Yeah.
And, and I think a lot of people are kind of scared of theory,
Yeah.
and they think it's really complicated. And so my kind of mission, I think, is to show that it's actually really easy. It's really simple to understand the basics of music, and right away. So even if someone is a complete beginner, right away in the first lesson we speak about the basics of music. What is a scale? What is a whole tone, semitone? How do you find each note on the guitar? Um, and people, I think that really makes a difference. And
Yeah, I
so
totally
yeah,
agree.
I'm very passionate about that. So
Yeah, not just about playing the instrument, but like music itself, and for your students to really understand music as
yeah,
what it is. Yeah.
yeah, and knowing the fretboard, not just moving the fingers, but really knowing what you're playing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I totally agree with you. When I started teaching, I picked up a few students, a few violin students that learned in a way where, like, there's four strings on the violin. It's G, D, A, and E. So they would have literally they would write the letter of the string with a number next to it, kind of like tablature, but
right.
so they know like, okay, it's this string with this finger, and then they just
Yeah,
learn one finger position. And this is such a limited like way
yes,
of learning, because as soon as like you have like, let's say, a B flat on the G string, you have to move your finger, and
yeah,
this would become very confusing, and they don't know what is a flat, what is a sharp, why you put your finger there, what is the distance between the notes, and all this.
yeah,
And then, like you were saying, if you teach it straight from the beginning, it goes hand in hand, because like you play it and you can hear it and you understand it on
exactly.
paper. Like it's actually very easy to
Yeah,
teach at any level, any age. Like I feel, but if you don't
yeah,
learn it
totally.
from the beginning, then it gets harder, because if let's say
Yeah,
you learn 4 years like with a certain system, and then you have to break it all down to learn a new system, then it's a lot harder
yeah, yeah. The thing is
to
that
teach.
after a few years, the player is kind of stuck
Yeah.
if they don't have the right basics, the right. Then there's very little you can advance from there because it's very limited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have your quarter tone guitar close by, or
Unfortunately not.
no?
It's the same guitar, but I added frets with a double-sided tape.
Okay. Oh
So
wow, so you can
yeah,
remove them after?
you could remove them. I stayed with those frets for years when I was working with Omar.
Okay.
Um, and it's been a while. I don't use that anymore.
Okay, yeah.
Um, but uh, but yeah.
But I mean, if you want, I would love to hear like a little something on the guitar. If you would like to play something for us, that would be amazing.
Oh, okay. Can you see the guitar? Like,
Yeah, yeah, I
yeah.
can see it very well. Yeah.
So one tune that's kind of very Middle Eastern, and it's an older one. It's called Desert Song,
Okay.
and you can hear recordings of it on Spotify and everywhere. Um, and so it's basically it's in five, so it goes like this.
amazing.
That's the one
I really
that's
like it.
kind of showing the use of the thumb,
Yeah, that's
similar to
exactly.
the oud.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. You even bend the string in a way where you go and reach those little quarter tones, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sometimes,
It's yeah,
yes,
like the tone at some point, like it. I mean, if I closed my eyes, I could like almost think it's a hood playing.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, I have pieces that are more based in that Middle Eastern, and this one is an older tune. And my like newer compositions are a little bit they're a bit different, so more harmonic. Uh, and when I write for the piano, it's again a completely different approach
yeah, definitely.
because the piano is harmonic, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, now that you mentioned this, this is a very interesting distinction between, I feel like, Eastern music or Middle Eastern music and the Western music, where like the music in the West is really based on like chord progressions, right?
Yeah,
And like the Middle Eastern music is a lot more like linear, so there's like very long phrases, a lot more space for improvisation and all this.
that's right. Yeah,
Um, so yeah, it's
yeah, yeah. And of
that's
course, I have pieces that you have, you know, you have changes, you have chord progressions. So it's a combination of both
yeah,
approaches somehow.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. And what you've been working on lately, is it more jazz? What genre are you kind of like going for in your latest projects?
So I'm trying to be careful a little bit with the genre. I because I try to bring myself. So it has many influences. So from jazz and world music. It's just my music,
Yeah,
but of course, you need to sometimes point the listener to something, right?
yep.
So I call it contemporary world jazz or
Okay,
something like that.
cool.
So it's just a lot of influences, a lot of directions in the music. So it's definitely not jazz as such, or it's a little bit difficult
It's hard.
to
Yeah, it's hard
pinpoint
to.
it.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So,
Yeah. Well, that's great.
but I have a piano trio that I've been kind of playing a lot with. I just released. I'm releasing a new album, May Song. That's only piano, so I'm not playing one note on the guitar in this album.
Okay.
So the music is very different and more influenced by jazz, I would say. Um, yeah.
Ah, that's amazing. All
hmm
right. In closing, do you have any tips or recommendations for aspiring musicians?
Yeah, I think finding your own voice, I think is very, very important, and finding what it is about music that you are excited and inspired about. So um, and really following through with that, finding your voice, the things that are you, right, and sticking with it and keeping practicing and working and yeah. So it's not always easy because uh, it may not be what most people want to listen to, but you just gotta do your thing,
Yeah.
and find that the music that inspires you. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. It was great talking with you, Itamar.
it was awesome meeting with you, and yeah, thank you.